So Bridie has led people analytics functions in banking at ING, in pharma, in GSK, and now in technology at Expedia. And I hope I haven't just taken your whole presentation by saying that. But uniquely, you've also reported directly to the CHRO in all those three as well. So well, I'm looking forward to hearing your perspectives today on how you use people analytics to drive strategic business impact. And then after Bridie, do save up your questions. Cole Napper will be coming on, and then we'll have a joint Q&A with Bridie and Cole afterwards. So Bridie, over to you.
Thanks, David. Good morning, everybody. First day, time slot on the day. It's a tough one, so bear with me. I've been leading the People Analytics and Experience team at Expedia for 3 years now. Expedia is a travel tech company. Like David said before that, I was in Europe in pharma and financial services. And the thing about tech is it's fun and fast, which is a new experience for me, indeed. Expedia has about 16,000 employees, 13 billion in revenue annually. I report to the CPO. We have 26 people in my team covering people analytics, data science, listening, and the experience design team. We are definitely an A team, if you ask me, which David did yesterday. Self-proclaimed A team. So we're going to talk a little bit about, how we align our people strategy with measurable business impact, which is hard, right? It's a really long value chain from our individual initiatives in the people org through to customer satisfaction or our revenue. So it can get really, really complex, really, really fast. So I want to share a little bit about how we have done that. And if there is one key takeaway that I want you to take from this today, it's not about the metrics. There is no golden metric. We all know metrics are fundamentally flawed. It's not about data analytics. This is about a way of operating. We always talk in HR about the business. We are a business. We are a large investment. We make a large investment in our people, and we have great influence on the outcomes of our organization in terms of customer satisfaction, our cost base, etc. So I think it's time for us to really start talking about how do we use data analytics to improve our performance across the people org and the workforce at large. A little bit of context for this is important. Expedia in 2019, we brought 26 brands together. So we essentially created a new organization, even though we've existed since the 90s. Therefore, we had new corporate functions. We also had very immature strategy and financial planning processes. So just to give a little bit of the context on where we were as we track through this. A little bit about our journey in general. I always love this one from SAP. I haven't found a better one to talk about people analytics maturity. If you have found a better one, please let me know. But it's really just illustrative about how we track through this. It's not a linear scale, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe we need to update it for Gen AI, who knows. But we started our journey in 2021, and it starts with the data. So we talk a lot about data in data analytics. We cannot connect our people strategy with our business outcomes without good data. So please don't give your data to the vendors. It is our competitive advantage. So make sure that you understand how your data connects through your processes to those measurable business outcomes. So we spent quite a bit of time making sure we had the right data sets in the right place, the right listening insights, because otherwise we can't do this. Then we built beautiful analytical products. I have very highly skilled people in my team, beautiful products. But as we went into 2023, we had a bunch of metrics, beautiful analytic products, beautiful data, all in the right place, and a big bunch of metrics. We had HR people walking around claiming my leadership development program reduced attrition for the organization. So my CPO at the time was like, come on, Bridie, how do we know we're doing the right things? We were entering into a 3-year business planning cycle. How can we be sure that we're choosing the right things in the people org to invest in? So we did a big one-off analysis to make sure that we were informing the strategy carefully. But one-off analysis is not really enough. So we wanted to set up a system in which we could consistently inform our people strategy and therefore our business strategy, measure and monitor our progress, but also make sure we understood what was driving those outcomes and we could switch course along the way. Those of you who have seen this maturity curve before, there used to be a big chasm. I took the chasm out because we leapt over it, but the chasm is really about your data sets and your capabilities to build that right-hand side in terms of prescriptive and predictive capabilities, because we all want to play on the right-hand side of this maturity curve, because that's really where transformative value for the organization is. But of course, it becomes infinitely more complex in terms of the data sets and capabilities you need. So we basically set up a simple system that we could scale, and that involved devising an impact framework that we could all align our professionals behind, our people org professionals. I'll go through that in a bit more detail in a second. We aligned our leadership behind that, both in the people org and across the business. We updated all our products so that it was all aligned with this framework and the metrics we'd defined. And then we started applying more advanced analytics over it. So we flexed those analytical muscles to bring it to life. People impact framework, it's just a framework. I thought academia would have solved this for us, so we went out to academia and looked through what was there about how do we measure the impact of HR investments, basically. Every single model out there was extremely complicated, extremely academic, so we've derived something from the advanced HR value chain because that was just right for us. But we did use academia to try and inform this. Let's not invent it from nothing. So it starts, this has been sanitized, obviously. So the metrics, I'm sorry, we couldn't put our exact indicators in here. We put the general sentiment. You never know when Booking or Airbnb is in the room. But that's because we also see this as a competitive advantage. Yeah. So in general, we're trying, like all companies, we want to increase our market share. We want to keep our cost base under control. We want our travelers to be extremely satisfied because then our partners are satisfied. And we want to be really efficient as an organization. So then we started to work with leadership as we were in the strategic planning process to really identify what are we trying to achieve here. Now, you can tie yourself up in knots about, how does this drive that business outcome and this business outcome. But in general, there are several things that we know. We know that engagement drives retention and productivity, which in turn drives positive business outcomes. So let's not tie ourselves up in knots. One important outcome for us is engagement, if we have an engaged workforce. In general, in the HR field, we have impact on 3 or 4 types of outcomes. We always have talent outcomes, obviously, in terms of the employee experience, etc. We have organizational outcomes because we can define an efficient organization. We build leadership capability. We make sure we retain the workforce at large. We have financial outcomes because our people is a big investment and our people investments are large. Sometimes you also add social. In our case, we just kept it simple, rolled social and I&D factors into the talent bucket. But that's also something that you could add in. So we ended up with a set of outcome metrics. The very important thing that we wanted the organization to understand on all of our people professionals, you can't influence these directly. These are outcomes. They are a culmination of all the efforts we do across the people org and our leaders do, and probably sometimes even market influencers. So what we want is for these to trend in the right direction. So we set targets on some of them. We didn't on others because they were not mature enough yet. But the point was we're all orientated around these set of priorities, and we are all looking for them to trend in the right direction. Makes sense, right? People team priorities, these are ours. Then you come down to the initiative-specific indicators. We were at a session last week with Prasad Sethi, who talked about the 4 E's in Google. Similar concept here. When you're designing initiatives or when you have a product or a policy in the HR teams, you really need to make sure you're understanding what kind of impact or drivers you're looking at. And it's difficult to optimize all of these at one time. If you have a very efficient process, that's the operational layer, it might impact the experience. You might want to create the very best experience. But what we wanted our HR teams and our HR experts to think about, what are they trying to achieve here, and how does that relate to our ultimate goals? What I also liked about this model is that the enablers are there. If we had endless people tech budget, we would be able to design the most amazing outcomes. But the reality is that we have distinct numbers of resources or enablers, so we therefore also need to look at the impact of those on these outcomes. So we worked with the operations teams, the tech teams, etc., to make sure that we're also measuring and monitoring there. And then you start to see this system come together. And you can start to use analytics to look at the relationships between these things so that you can understand what input leads to what output. This is an example of an initiative performance measure. We had a very large initiative to reset our performance management practice. Our goals were simplicity, transparency, and equity. And here are some examples of the types of measurements that the teams and the leaders are monitoring and measuring in this case. This was so effective at keeping us focused. All of our experience scores around performance management are above the 80s now, and they were not there in 2023. In addition, all those scores around, we have equitable distributions, etc. So we've made a marked improvement in the way that we do performance management because we kept people focused on a simple set of outcomes and goals. Very nice to have all those data analytics metrics, very nice to have this framework, but it's just going to sit on the shelf unless we activate it across the organization. And this is the real challenge. We all talk a lot in people analytics about how you create a data-savvy culture. I think what surprised us the most was that this effort did really help our organization stay focused, really start using data to inform their choices and to measure and monitor progress in a much more efficient way and a focused way than they were in the past. So firstly, we embedded it into the business rhythm. In our case, we didn't have business reviews on people topics. Crazy, I know that. So I could just sit there and say, well, let's leave it. But no, we created them. So that's how you can create power in the organization from data analytics. We created monthly business reviews and quarterly business reviews, and we took very careful decisions about what we reviewed on a monthly basis and what we review on a quarterly basis so that we stayed very focused at a leadership level. We updated the analytics products. So before they were just bunches of metrics, we changed that into stories, so that you could really see from the outcomes. You can see a screenshot on the right-hand side. You can really see that diagnostic process that you can go through in the products. We developed anomaly detection and forecasting. Anomaly detection is really to look at where are we off track. We started with 1,000 data points. I think now we're up to 2,500, that's what it says. So that just is the machine runs across the underlying data points and raises where we might be off track. So that helps us professionals to see, we have a retention issue in India in this business, rather than having to look through the underlying metrics, because that might not show up at an Expedia level or at a division level. So that's really about early warning signs. And then we also put forecasting over that so that we can see, are we off track towards our goals? So that's how we can use our analytical capabilities to really make it easy for people to make decisions behind that. And then we did education and communication. We had a people team day of learning. Everybody went through a workshop using this framework to really flex and start being able to apply this in their daily business. We do the continuous reinforcement around that. We do communication. We embedded it into our portfolio management process so that every time we kick off a new program or a revision of a program, we start with what impact, how does this fit into our impact framework, what metrics are we defining? This has been really, really effective at reinforcing this way of working. So we're really starting to see some structural impact across the organization. Simplicity and focus is number one. I mean, we've all seen teams come in with 20 metrics, right? And actually it's not telling us anything, and neither can we be actionable. I think the real difference here, a common set of simple metrics. Each of the programs only have 5 or 6 metrics, and it just really helps them to do that. It's dynamic, so if a metric isn't useful, forget it, get a new one. And that was also something that we had to really learn and have a bit of a mindset change, that this is a dynamic process. This is not static at any stage. It increased our adoption of our analytical products, 50% off the top of my head. More views on our products. Now, yesterday we talked about whether adoption is key, but yeah, it's the starting point to using information to make decisions. So if people are not looking at my products, then I may as well stop them. Data savvy culture, I was really shocked. We had a strategic leadership event in the people team, and some of the HR BPs said to me, I don't need your monthly business reports anymore, which was a total shock to me. I was like, what? You've wanted these? I type up insights. My team's typing up insights for you, really helping them build their confidence so that they can discuss that with their leadership. But they told me they no longer need it. They're happy to look in the dashboard. They're happy to look at the conclusions from the anomaly detection themselves. That's almost a round of applause situation, right? Yeah, thanks. So it's all my team. It's all my team, of course. But I just think it's a really good sign that if you create a reinforcing mechanism that's really focused, this really helps our HR colleagues because it's embedded in their way of working. And then they wanted the deep dive on the quarterly basis. All of this is very nice, but this is about business impact. That's what we're striving for here. And now we really have clarity about our outcome drivers. So the story I just told about performance management, we really saw that lift in engagement. We have the highest engagement level in 3 years. And that is because we are staying very focused on the underlying drivers of that, despite the fact that our business continues to go through reorganization. We've had a massive leadership change, new CEOs. So I think that's evidence that we can really continue to guide the organization through this as we stay focused. Suspiciously, our business performance is also extremely strong the last 2 quarters, despite a softening in the travel market. So I constantly point that out to my chief people officer. That shows that an engaged workforce can navigate the organization through this. Our targets are on track. That's good news. That means we're on track to deliver the impact that we were looking for this year. Key takeaway, remember, it's not about the metrics. It's not about the analytics. They are enablers. That this is about a way of working. And this is, a way of operating in the people org that we have established, and that is really helping us to stay focused and have impact. Thank you.
Righty, so
I left time for questions.
we're going to do questions together with Cole.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because then we'll have you both on stage. But we actually do have a little bit of time, so I can see Michael's desperate to ask a question. So, maybe if we get a microphone to Michael in the front row.
I messed with the agenda. Sorry.
No, you didn't. That's fine. No, don't yell. They're never going to hear over there, Michael. No. Even I need a microphone, and I'm a foghorn.
Hi, Bertie. Thank you so much for that. I have a question is, when you say anomalies and you say variables, useful variables, what is your comparison or dependent variable in order to make those determinations?
So it's a technique of analyzing seasonal and trend, and then there's a residual factor. And if the residual factor is out of what is expected in the forecast, then it's STL is the technique. Yeah. And because our metrics in the people org generally have a very strong seasonal or trend influence, that's why we use that as. And I forgot to mention that that's a technique we use across Expedia. So we use the exact same detection techniques that we're using on the business side, because then we can always compare with business metrics, and it gives us credibility with leadership immediately. So wherever we can, and we have the advantage that we're a platform company, so analytics is our core business. It's wherever we can, we use the same techniques so that it's seamless if we want to combine things in dashboards or other types of models.
Let's do a couple more questions, and then we'll get Cole on stage, and then Bridie, you can come back with Cole as well. But let's just do a couple more questions if people. Yes, it's this row, it's this little section again in the room. And if people have got questions up there, you might. And if you're behind the pillar, you might have to move. You've got a yeah. Okay, go on, Elijah.
Thank you for the presentation. It was amazing. My one question was, why was feedback quality experimental? I mean, I kind of understand, but how would you even measure that for performance management?
Feedback quality?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So we moved to an always-on feedback mechanism. We wanted to make sure that people were giving more feedback more frequently, not just up and down in your line. So we were looking at, how easy is that to give and receive, and then what are people's perception of that? So do I receive feedback that increases my performance? Yeah. Did that answer the question? Yeah.
And then right on the front row, at the end of the hand up. No, the front row, this way. Oh, you're going that way. Okay. You don't want to get in front of the camera. Okay, that's fair enough. Yep, there we are.
Hi. In terms of your data maturity journey that you shared on the clean data segment of it, can you just go into a little bit of what that process looked like to ensure that you had clean data, and then the extent of how clean it was, and what was like the, okay, we're ready to go point?
Yeah, you never have perfect data, right? It's a forever journey. But what we wanted to make sure was that we had the right data in the right place at the right time to measure these things, right? And enable whatever products or policies we were doing, or business aspects. So it was really about shifting it out of the core systems, defining it very well. It's really about data governance, right? And then really understanding data quality. So we set up data quality mechanisms so that you can make deliberate decisions about this is stable and good quality. This isn't, but that's okay, because we don't need that one to be perfect. This one running payroll needs to be perfect. So you can differentiate choices there. Because shifting data around and improving it is expensive, and time cost, takes time. So really making priority decisions about which data sets are most key. We didn't have a learning strategy. We didn't have good learning and kind of feedback insights. So we made some investments there. We didn't have anything about, we always have so much demographic data in people analytics. We have a lot of research data because we asked employees stuff all the time, but we don't have that much observational data that differentiates us from marketing. And that's where we really wanted to make sure that we could look at the collaboration and communication data, respecting privacy, of course, and making sure that we understood networks and information flow through the organization. So there's some of the investments we made so that we could measure some of this stuff. Yeah.
Okay, we have got time for 2 more questions. So I think Jay's got a question here, and there's 3 questions. Let's do 3 questions because we do have 6 minutes. So let's go. Yes.
Hi. For your cyclical business reviews, how did you take into account a business leader's scope to what you showed during the monthly and the quarterly reviews?
Yeah, so we looked at what are leading indicators and what has variation across a month. Because some things, like especially the target outcomes, they're not going to shift on a monthly basis. You're not going to look at human capital return on investment or those kind of things. So if representation is your goal, then you might look at attrition and hiring and engagement of different demographic groups on a monthly basis, but you only look at representation on a quarterly basis. That was a hard mindset change for our leadership. because I think they wanted to see everything all the time, but the advent of anomaly detection helped them to understand that we will detect something if we're off track during the quarter in time. Ultimately, we want to know when it's off track in advance. But yeah, so that's how we did it. But that took a little bit of time for everybody to get used to. I think the first monthly business review I did still had quite a lot of metrics. We get less and less.
We'll go Jay, and then we'll move the microphone along there to the row there. Yeah. Is the microphone on, or are you just switching the microphone? It might work now. No, it doesn't work. Okay, so let's sort the microphone out. If you ask your question.
I love how you broke out like the performance measures by like outcome, experiential, operational, and then you broke it out for like the different like practices within HR, like talent acquisition, leadership development, et cetera. Did you do anything for like the HR partners or anything like that? Did you break out like measurements for them as well? And how did you do that?
HRBPs, you mean?
Yeah, HRBPs.
We did not do anything specific for their function, but we definitely just lined up the divisional goals with the Expedia kind of goals, so that the HRBPs and their business leaders are reviewing the same types of metrics and objectives, because they're really your activation arm. Secondly, they're setting the talent strategy and executing it in the businesses. So we just lined them up in that way. I don't recall anything specific for the HRB function, a BP function.
No, like way of kind of like making sure that they're driving these types of initiatives and stuff like.
As in monitoring their effectiveness?
Exactly.
I did get the question, but I said I'm not in the business in people analytics of evaluating if people are effective. We have performance management processes for that. We have goal setting for that. So I think those mechanisms take care of that. Yeah. But making sure that they were synced, bought in, had input into the metrics, like those HRBPs were all in the strategic planning process, was very important, because they bring the business perspective into the strategy, right? Yeah, so they're fundamental to setting the strategy and then making sure that we stay on track.
And I think the positive result you had is when they tell you they don't need their monthly insight reports anymore.
Yeah.
They're happy to go into the dashboards themselves,
Yeah.
which is, I bet there's lots of people in the room that would enjoy that in their organisation. Jay, second time lucky, hopefully.
Hopefully, yes. Thank you. Question for you regarding data savvy organizations and Expedia being a tech company versus your experience at GSK, where it's very old line. What do you feel that both were at similar places from a data literacy, data centric perspective? And if not, how would you compare and contrast the evolution of that data centric approach in those organizations?
Yeah. So the first thing is they're different businesses, right? Heavily regulated, long business cycle businesses like pharma and banking that I've worked in before. They have a very compliance, risk-driven kind of culture. So GSK had a very, very mature reporting and analytics mechanisms already when I worked for them. So that's a little bit different. I found the HR professionals extremely data literate. In GSK, they didn't have any of the more advanced kind of data science, et cetera. So that's where we could evolve. But because they are such giant organizations with these very cyclical mechanisms of work, I found that quite mature. Tech is scrappy, especially Expedia, because we're not the size of Amazon or Microsoft. And we, like I said, we were creating new corporate functions. So it was more about HR maturity and the maturity in our practices and processes in the HR function. That was more of a challenge than the data literacy. I think probably, please don't put this on LinkedIn, probably my HR colleagues are just the same. We have a range of extremely data literate and then others that need a little bit of extra support. But I think in the 3 years that I've been working there, we've made huge progress. They really seek information to make decisions, which is where you want to play.
We're going to save your question, please, because Bridie will be coming back on stage at the end. But we want to keep on time and give Cole the time that that he's been promised as well for his session. So, a huge round of applause, Bridie. Really impressive journey. Thank you.